to a great day.
Yeah, today was sick. Cheers, brother. Nice. Cheers. Good, sir. So should we set the scene a little bit? I mean,
Yeah.
So Hayden and I traveled up from Charleston. We flew in to New York, bombed across the Hudson. We're now in the heart of the Catskills. Bird camp. We got Joe Heusinger, Covert Creek Outfitting.
Yep.
We got Kevin Ervig.
From Kevin Ervig.
Kevin Ervig. And we did some cool stuff today. We hunted some cool little pockets for rough grouse and woodcock.
Oh, yeah.
And you want to kind of walk us through today's hunt a little bit?
Yeah, no, it's super cool. Excited to have you guys here. Thanks for coming up. Definitely. Thanks for Kevin coming to hang out, do some filming with us. So it was good. No, we had a great morning today. It was, what was it, 23 degrees this morning when we walked out of the cabin.
It was chilly. It actually, it started, maybe we shouldn't talk about the smoke detector going.
Wow.
Well, how early was that?
I don't know.
Or how late, I should say.
I don't know. But this lovely wood-burning fireplace decided that it was going to...
Just for the record, only 50% of the occupants of this house got up.
There was a loud alarm, and only half of us heard it.
I heard it. I just kind of rolled over.
You're like, oh, it's
fire! And I was like, they got it. Rolled over.
So everything was fine, needless to say. So yeah, it was 23 degrees this morning. So the plan was to do a little rough grouse and woodcock hunting here in the Catskills. So no, it was a good day. You know, we planned to get out and do some pocket covers, old orchards, stone walls, some just, you know, classic New York grouse cover. And it worked.
It did work.
It worked.
How did it work?
It was a good time. No, so we hit a couple spots this morning. Started out in one spot that was one of my favorite little covers, small walk. It's one of those either hit them or you don't. Unfortunately, we did not. And then swung over to the next spot, and what was it? A minute out of the truck, we had our first point. And then track, another point, hard point, another track, and then I don't know, how far did we walk? 100 yards? 250
Probably
yards?
only 150 yards from the
150
road.
yards from the road.
Yeah, totally.
From where we got out of the trucks.
It was close.
And it was close.
Yeah.
And that's when it got
But
exciting.
the cover's maybe only 200 yards
Deep.
250 yards deep, right?
And then you kind of hit that, the dogwood.
200 yards, and then you hit a dogwood swamp.
Yeah.
And what's funny is Rhett was on the last point. Rhett had pointed at the last spot. We kind of walked up past that, and we were kind of at that point kind of unassuming because they were hard points, but he was looking around and leaving them, so it wasn't like, oh my gosh, there's a bird right there. So he kind of moved off and around like he was. I had lost sight of the dog at this point.
Yeah, he had circled around.
Yeah, and then Hayden and I were standing, and it's funny. He goes, dude, this is like really nice woodcock habitat. And I was like, actually, like, you know, up north, our New York covers are really different than a lot of other places in the country.
Oh, heck yeah.
And I leaned over, I said, actually, dude, this is like perfect grouse cover.
Actually,
those
you're wrong.
words.
You're wrong. And here's why.
Politely interjected that, no, this is what we're looking for here for grouse.
Sure.
Because everywhere you go to hunt grouse, it's a little bit different. Like in the Midwest, you have the aspen. In Pennsylvania, we don't have aspen regen like that. So ours comes up birch and maple and beech. And so it's just, you point it out when you see it. So, you know, this is his first time in New York, so I was trying to point out that, you know, this is actually good grouse habitat. And right as we said that, this is where it gets funny, because you saw one bird, you saw two. I
saw two birds.
You saw one bird.
I saw one bird.
And I saw two. So two birds get up.
And it was literally right when you said
oh
that.
my gosh, the word grouse had barely left my supple lips.
It's always fun when you can call the shot when it's just like, so this is really boom, and that's when it happens.
Yeah.
But so two came up, and I don't know, the angle that you were at must have been odd because you only saw the one.
I only saw one.
Which worked out.
I only saw the one.
And you only saw the one. So it almost flushed behind, over to your left, over your left shoulder.
Yep.
And they kind of got up and kind of split. And as soon as they split, my camera wasn't rolling. I swing the camera up and start filming the bird that's coming off to the right.
Yep.
And
I don't know how you did that.
there was the shot was so close that I think because you didn't only heard one shot.
I only heard one shot.
Yeah. So I think what happened was you pulled up and shot a millisecond because you heard his shot.
I heard his shot.
So yeah, so your ears must have still been, a little concussed from your shot.
Yeah.
Right when you shot.
Yep.
So I just heard one shot on my left, and then your shot saw the bird tumble.
Yep.
That's all I knew from this part of the story, and
That's
so I
where-
feel like we got to hear your half of
that's-
this now.
so-
because that's pretty much what you saw,
That's
right?
So for a split second, so I'm coming. I always, when I'm running a dog, I like to hang back a little bit. Obviously, I need my gunners ahead of me,
Yeah.
for just pure sanity.
I
And
before we dive into your perspective,
Sure.
I just want to say, so for people who maybe are like listening, maybe haven't hunted before, only hunted a few times. Let's say for people who haven't hunted before, we're hunting behind dogs.
Correct.
So when we say point, we're not talking about this.
Yes, yeah. So we're talking about pointing breed dogs.
Yes.
In this case, my young dog Rhett, he's an LHU type English pointer. He's not quite a year and a half old. So I've got my pointer, and I also run a German Shorthair pointer. We had one of Kevin's dogs on the ground today as well, which is an English setter. How old's Ragnar? He's 7 months, 8 months old.
now, yeah.
So little, puppy run.
So when we
Super
say,
nice dog, really like him.
when we say point, walk me through that. What is that? Illustrate that. Paint the
Sure.
picture.
So a pointing dog, their job is to, on first scent of a game bird, they are to stop, stand still, and indicate the direction and location of which that game bird is, whether that's in cover, in the wide open, behind something. As soon as that dog gets initial scent of that bird, that's my preference is on initial scent. I want that dog to stop, stand still, and then if that bird moves, I want that dog to relocate and rework that bird with caution. That's kind of my preference in working a dog.
Right. So we had an initial point.
Correct.
Multiple.
Multiple.
Yeah. So there was a point, and then we realized we kind of pushed through ahead of that dog, and we realized, okay, we're not kicking up any birds. Like, got to keep moving. Dog goes on point again.
And we actually, so from looking back at this too, and hindsight's always 20/20. But when we first come into that cover, traditionally, and we all said it, when you first step foot in that cover, it's traditional woodcock cover. We had that first point.
There was a beaver
Oh, yeah.
dammed up that creek there, and the water was kind of coming up. and
All
through.
four of us are thinking, oh, this is a woodcock point, no problem.
And woodcock are related to sandpiper, so they're almost like a shore. Like they're not shorebirds, but they like.
No, they
wet.
are. They are.
They're the same
They're a
family.
shorebird.
Yeah, okay.
They're a shorebird. So a ruffed grouse is a gallinaceous bird. So it's a chicken, a pheasant, something like that. Whereas a woodcock is a shorebird. It's a sandpiper, a snipe, something like that. So two different birds, similar but different habitat. We'll dive into that. And so we're all thinking this is a woodcock based on the habitat. Well, the dog moved. We're thinking, okay, something's
Because woodcock
different.
traditionally hold still.
Traditionally hold tight. Not necessarily this year, but typically they hold still.
Yeah.
Dog relocates, points again in, what was it, 25, 30 yards. Again, still kind of woodcock cover. We're not really thinking much of it. So to me, that's kind of misreading a situation. I should have looked at that and said, we might have a running grouse here. It's just an odd spot for a grouse. Until we got up to that edge, like Kevin said, it was, wow, this is like, storybook grouse cover. So where
There's food everywhere.
There's food everywhere. So where we actually pinned those birds was in kind of the gap or the edge, we call it, rough grouse or edge birds, was in that gap between a swamp bottom type of cover. We got into multiflora rose, which are rose hips. There was some dogwood and alders on one edge, and then it was a stone wall. and basically hardwoods before dogwood swamp. So the last bit of edge cover,
Transitioning
transition,
habitat. Yeah.
density next to open or clear cover.
Yeah.
And as soon as we hit that, we were like, oh, this, and boom, that was it.
Yeah.
So realistically, we were pushing 1 or 2 grouse right out of the truck until that edge, we had the right formation.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, that drummer could have been on the other side of the road and went right before we pulled up.
Absolutely.
Kind of popped over the road, and then as soon as Rhett started up the road, he probably caught scent of it at where it crossed.
Worked it right through.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, okay, so you saw one bird go up.
I only saw one bird.
Yeah.
I saw one. So I saw the one bird, and I heard 2 shots. And in that moment, I'm thinking, Thomas is crazy.
Yeah.
It's like he wasn't gonna hit that bird.
Yeah.
So I had no idea what was going on.
Yeah.
And then everything kind of settled. I know I saw Hayden come. It was picture perfect. I saw Hayden come up, calm, cool, and collected, mount the gun, swing, bang, and this bird just folded. And I'm on like, you know how it is. It's it goes from 0 to 100. Everybody's like, super, super excited. And then I'm thinking, wait, Thomas shot.
Yeah.
What's going on?
I was just trying to poke and claim credit.
So, at first I thought, well, he probably missed. Because I clearly saw your hit hit the bird.
Well, so
but then I feel like your perspective comes last.
Okay.
Because then I asked Thomas, I said, which bird did you shoot at? And he goes, well, the one that fell. I was like,
as soon as you said which bird,
and Hayden, being the nice gentleman that he is, immediately said, well, maybe he hit the bird. And I was like, no. I saw the gun crack. You hit that bird. He must have missed behind it. I said, did you shoot the left or the right bird? He couldn't tell.
I didn't hear you ask me that.
I asked him multiple times because I was very curious.
I don't know. There was a lot going on.
But then, tell your part.
Yeah,
but
so when you said no, so I pull up on a bird. I see two birds flush. One goes right. One kind of comes up, and it's much bigger. This is Hayden's.
Which direction?
Fan, by the way,
Yeah.
if anyone's watching, this tail fan right here was Hayden's bird.
So you do acknowledge that your bird was on the left.
Yes, my bird was definitely on the left. And I pull up and I pull the trigger and I see the bird fold. I don't hear 2 shots. And then you say Hayden shot. So I'm like, oh, we must have both shot at that bird. Because for me, it was like the only clear shot. For him, that bird came around.
you were on the other side of a pretty big, thick, multiflora rose.
Right,
for sure.
Yeah. So when you say, no, he hit that bird, I was like, oh, man.
The boy came all the way from South
Deflated.
Carolina, and I just ruined his
I was like,
day.
he beat me to the punch by like a millisecond. Because I was like, we definitely shot at the exact same time at the same bird. And I see Rhett, your pointer, go off after the bird that I saw fall, the one that I was shooting at.
And I
was
again,
so confused. When
Yeah.
you started walking over there, I was like, what do you
again,
mean?
that's the thing.
Yeah.
I had no idea, and
Yeah.
I'm watching the dog, so I called him back around to find your Hayden's down bird, and he goes the way that we're facing. He goes hard left.
Yeah.
And I'm changing my body angle to redirect the dog
Yeah.
to Hayden's bird, and he goes hard left, nose to the ground, and goes right to a bird. And I was all sorts of confused.
I was
Because
like,
that's-
what is that dog after? Is there like a dead thing over there? And it's like
well, that's
a dead bird.
honestly no. When I looked at it, I thought I didn't know what it was. So when he was interested, I walked over, and when I saw it was a bird, I was like,
I
how
thought
did
I
his
thought you
bird
were.
landed
I thought
over
it was a
here?
porcupine.
I'm
I
like,
thought for sure he was getting quailed, or like
I did
literally not. And maybe that's just my terrible, had no faith in your
Yeah, you
shot,
clearly
but
had no
You were
clearly
doubting.
had no faith because
were doubting.
because he said he shot at the bird that fell, and I watched one bird fall.
Yeah,
so
no,
so I thought he was getting quailed, was getting
I
into
had
some
no idea.
feces. Who knows?
I thought that the bird that I had shot maybe was crippled and had ran, and he was pinning it on the left. I was like, oh, he got it over
Yeah.
there. It's all mangled now. Like, let's go see what's going on here.
Yeah.
And then,
Well, it really was one of those situations where, like, I wasn't really ready for the flush, and I just kind of, like, threw my gun up. I saw the shot. I took the shot, and I was like, I could have easily missed that. So I was stoked when we ended up with 2 birds down.
and that's
And
so.
you picked up that bird, and you you were going nuts.
Yeah,
was
and they're
excited.
like, we got a double, and I'm like,
And then me and Hayden are like, wait, let's find the
wait.
second bird.
Yeah.
So from my perspective, I slow everything down in my head because, like you just said, grouse hunting is 0 to 100. There's no walk into the point, kick a bird up, mount the gun, swing, take your shot. That doesn't happen. That's not rough grouse hunting.
Yeah.
But behind you, I was able to watch the bird hook around, the gun come up, you move, bang, and that bird twisted and fell. I was like, that's a done deal. That's not a crippled bird. That's a done deal.
And just rocked it.
It was just done. You made it was awesome. You made
Honestly,
a great
it was
shot.
so odd that bird banked so hard. I
Yeah.
don't know why it did.
No, it went hard 90. It came up and just
It
turned
literally
and
came up,
crested.
And I didn't see it for a
fun.
while. There was a few trees or whatever when I was like shouldering the gun. I heard the flush, was getting ready to see him, and I didn't see him for a minute.
So
and
you
then-
must have been
well,
so
no,
close to that multiflora that you didn't. I literally saw them both come off of the ground.
He was right
Yeah.
there.
Ah, I
No,
just
so
saw
what
the one.
happened, the bird that you shot, when that bird got up, so it cleared the multiflora. Right when it did, it banked that hard 90 because it cleared that edge. It was banking hard 90 to go to the pines.
Right.
Remember I said the escape cover is the pines in
Yeah.
that particular walk.
Yeah.
So that bird hooked. Your bird towered up to the left based on what you were saying. I didn't see it.
Yeah.
And that bird was probably going to hit the canopy
Dogwood swamp.
and go probably to the pines on the left.
Mm.
So we were right. The strip of cover that we were hunting it's about 75 yards wide
Yeah.
between two strips of mature pines and two rock walls.
Yeah. And eventually people will be able to see the footage of this spot, but like for these birds, a lot of the time the cover you're hunting is really thick. And so you're doing your best to just like use all your senses because you want to be safe, you want to know where everyone's at, right? And sometimes like you hear these birds. For people that don't know, like these birds make a very distinct sound when they flush.
It's winged thunder.
Yeah.
It's that.
You were a drummer, right?
No.
I thought you were in a band and a drummer.
I played guitar.
Oh, you play guitar. I was gonna have you give us a little grouse drum solo. Can you do it
I got
anyway?
nothing. I got nothing.
No?
I don't even know what that would sound.
I don't know what that.
It's
Can you demo?
no, it's fine. But yeah, no, you're using all your senses and you're trying to anticipate where that visual opportunity is going to be. Oftentimes from what you hear.
You hear the bird, see the bird, shoot at the bird.
Yeah, around the bird.
Literally.
Yeah, like when you hear the noise, like what I told people this fall was if you hear the flush and you look to find it
Too late.
and then raise your gun, you're too late.
Yeah.
Your gun has to be lifted as you look for that bird, and as soon as it's in your sight picture, you're pulling the trigger.
Yeah. Yeah. So you were guiding earlier this season in what state
Minnesota.
again? Minnesota. And so like maybe one of you can kind of speak to this. Like rough grouse have a pretty extensive range, right?
Yeah, they're the most prevalent game bird. Like
The
more
most
states
widespread.
can widespread. Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
And I know you've all hunted them in multiple states. I've hunted them in Wyoming and here now. This was my first rough grouse on the wing, which was awesome. But so like how does the kind of like situations and opportunities, how is it different what we were doing today from what you were kind of doing a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple differences. One is obviously the cover. Here we're hunting a lot of overgrown farms on state land. They do some timber harvesting, which creates young forest habitat, which is essential for rough grouse.
Yeah.
But basically they have that mimicked here by old farmsteads regrowing. And the orchards are great because they're overgrown and tangled, and they have a great food source in it. Where in Minnesota and a lot of other states further north, there's still a lot of active logging going on.
Yeah.
So they're obviously clear cutting, taking the log for paper, wood, whatever, pole, whatever they're going to use it for, and then that slowly regenerates. And as that regenerates, it gives thick cover for rough grouse, woodcock, and a myriad of other species. But obviously they like that because hard for predators to catch them. So that's a big difference. Another difference is pressure on birds. So Wyoming, there's very little pressure and very little historic pressure on those rough grouse. So as you probably saw, there were probably ones that you could almost hit with a rock.
You could walk up to them.
Yes,
And poke 'em.
that is not the same kind of rough grouse that we're hunting out here in the east, or even the same rough grouse that you find in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Now, there are outliers in that. So if you go up to like northern Maine, northern New Hampshire, basically the further north and farther away from pressure, where they have not had habitual hunting pressure over the last decade
And pressure,
or so.
not to cut you off, pressure can be anything.
Yeah.
Not just hunting
Not
pressure.
hunting pressure. Yeah.
So a lot of the state lands and management areas that we hunt in New York, I'd use as the example, is there's bird hunters, there's deer hunters. It's archery season right now.
So
there's
anything's
hikers,
coming and bumping them,
horseback,
yeah.
right? Anything,
And
any
even-
outside, any outside influence is pressure.
Right.
Yeah. So that's a big difference. And in states that have less hunting opportunity for rough grouse, often they're pressured even more. Or even it could even just not be human pressure. It could be there's less of them, so they're pressure from predators as well.
Yeah.
So there's just overall in this region, Pennsylvania, even Virginia, New York, and I'd say there's fewer birds than some of the other more northern states. So the pressure is just different, and they've been hunted here much longer than they have out west. And there is a study. I'm a little shaky on it, but there was a study where they basically watched grouse populations on an island that had, like, to their knowledge, had no hunting pressure.
Okay.
And then they started hunting them.
Yeah.
And even years later, those genes are passed on. Those, like, the more flighty genes, the more
Really?
cagey genes
Yeah.
are passed on. And I think that's like,
It's
with any species,
It's the evolution.
right?
It's evolution of
happening.
species.
Survival of the
Absolutely.
fittest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in areas like New York, where they even tried to market hunt them in this area, it wasn't like the hep hen or the heath hen, where it wasn't as effective, but they were still heavily hunted for,
How long ago was that?
I mean, they've been hunting them here with dogs and guns probably since
Like the
what?
market stuff.
The market hunting for them
A
was
lot of market hunting was
ended in the late 1800s.
I was going to say
1900s,
late
right?
1800s, early 1900s
Yeah.
was the heyday of market.
But
hunting.
they were basically effectively too hard to overharvest during those market hunting days. I mean,
Gotcha.
they're like the passenger pigeon is gone from market hunting and stuff like that, but they were too tough to fully knock out.
Yeah.
And then I'd say the final difference is just the sheer number of them. So today we only moved 3 grouse, and we heard one, saw 2.
Yeah.
That we know of. There could have been another one. Where was it that Rhett was super birdie that one time? Could have been a bird there. We don't know. We don't know that though. But so confirmed only 3 birds. So that's a big difference, and that's a slow day for here, I'd say.
That's
right?
a slow day.
Yeah.
So to kind of paint the picture, we can compare numbers too to give an idea. Minnesota, Lake States versus New York. So New York State, year to year, the average flush rate on rough grouse is about 0.9 grouse flushed.
That's
per
what it's
hour.
in PA too.
That's about the same. Yeah.
About the
So
same
Kevin lives in Pennsylvania. Year to year, myself, my outfit, my guides, we average a flush rate of 2.25 to 2.5 grouse flushed per hour.
Which is awesome. I mean,
whereas the
that's
state
great.
average is 0.9. It varies by region, everything, whether you have a dog, no dog, all of that.
And a lot of that's too, like you guys have, your scouting covers. This is your livelihood. So your scouting covers, you have really good spots. This is
Absolutely.
This is your life.
It makes
So
a huge
a
difference.
lot different than like a weekend warrior that may go out and,
Right.
scout a new cover all the time.
Oh, yeah. For us,
Like if you would probably say on a scout day versus like a guide day, those numbers are very different.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I mean, a slow, like today, like we said, was a slow day. We hunted 3, what did we hunt?
4 hours.
4
maybe.
hours, maybe.
I mean, after we had such a great little push there, we kind
of dialed it back.
dialed it back a little bit.
Kind of let it rock.
Yeah.
But today was a slow
Skunk
day.
was off.
Yeah.
The skunk was off. Today was a slow day on a real fast, run and gun day. We've put up 24 grouse in 4 hours. But I would say our typical two birds an hour, stands true for the most part.
And we're probably coming off peak too.
We're in a transition right now. We're in a seasonal transition coming out of, October. Food sources are changing. We're at the
Cover's changing. Leaves are
cover's
down.
changing. We're just about at the peak of the rut for deer hunting as well. So the increase of bow hunter pressure in the past week to week and a half has
We
been
ran into
significant.
a couple today.
We saw some bow hunters today. So that's significant added pressure.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So since you guys have all kind of hunted different areas for the same bird, what would you say is like the most unique aspect of the Catskills and grouse hunting or upland bird hunting in this particular area?
For me in this area, it's a mix between cover and the history and tradition of it. So the area in the Catskills, like we kind of noted before, so we hunt a lot of old farmland, overgrown orchards, bluestone walls, alder bottoms. It's not the sea of aspen. So a lot of people, if they've never hunted the Catskills or New York State, they come to this cover, and it's super foreign to them. It doesn't have, it's not the aspen with the hazel understory, and it's just a different cover. We hunt, like the stuff we were in today was pretty bare floor. There was some cover, but it was pretty bare open floor. But it's got those pockets of what I call dirty cover. When I say dirty cover, I just mean the mean tangles, vines, the stuff that wants to bite you and grab you.
Yeah.
And then the history of it, a lot of, I'm a super traditional grouse hunter. I love the nostalgia of it. I shoot early American vintage shotguns. I run bells on my dogs. I love and cherish that stuff.
Analog guy.
Exactly.
Big
Yeah, I'm
analog
not a digital guy. I'm an analog guy.
He still has a GPS though, so that's
Yeah.
I do use a GPS collar. A lot of the people that we all read their books. The Gene Hills, the Burton Spillers, Grandpa Grouse. These guys, they hunted this area. A lot of these, Burton Spiller, Tapley, they would hunt the Mohawk Valley of New York State. They wrote about it in their books. So there's a lot of history and heritage here when it comes to ruffed grouse. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a special place. It's not just going out for another bird hunt. It's more about grabbing the right gun, going with the right people, doing it in a certain way. Like we went out and we had just that the way that walk played out. You guys each shot a bird. Like we were done.
Yeah.
That was it. Like we did it.
Yeah.
There's no, we didn't mention shooting a limit or doing this or, let's go, another one. Like you take the time to look at the bird, talk about how it was done, the whole setup, who was here, who saw what, everything. And that's what's special about it.
Kevin brought something up, and Kevin's hunted with you. This is my first time hunting with you. Hayden's first time hunting with you too. Yep. And like Kevin's hunted with you a couple times before. Obviously we were filming today, but you brought up the fact that like, the whole kind of story that you were kind of painting the picture of like the story of the area and like and just talking a little bit more about the context of what we were doing. And that wasn't like, that's not for the camera. That's something you do regardless whenever you're out with clients. And you were saying like, that's just kind of the way he rolls.
Yeah, and I think that's what attracts people like me and Joe to hunt together, and a lot of our mutual friends up here to hunt together is that kind of that aspect of it for sure. And I feel like a lot of other hunting, pursuits are a lot of them are whack 'em and stack 'em, and tailgate photos and of limits and all this stuff. And quite honestly, shooting a limit in New York is quite the feat.
Which is 4. So the state limit on ruffed grouse is 4 birds.
Yeah. So that's quite the feat.
I've never shot a limit in New York State.
Neither have I. It's not only quite the feat, but also if like that was our goal to go out there, 2 things would happen. One, possibly we'd hit it and we'd just be blowing out a lot of these pocket covers because these birds are so isolated in these old farms and these alder runs because there's not a whole lot of timber harvesting in this area. So one, I feel like we, if that was our goal going out here, that would could really do some damage on some of these populations.
Right.
And the other thing, if that was our goal going out here, we'd be disappointed 99% of the days.
Yeah.
And so, taking a second to cherish these birds as we're taking them from the cover, and we brought them back here, and did a lot of extra work to eat them. You could just fry them up, which is fine, but like we
broke
made
out the
pizza and like did, we did it up.
Yeah.
And so like, to me, it's more, and to Joe as well, it's more the the full circle element of it. It's the being out there with the dogs, with good friends, and shooting at birds, dude. It's a bonus, but when it happens and when it happens right, like it happened today, it's like there's no better feeling.
Right.
And Joe does, like, even if those cameras weren't there and we weren't recording, taking photos and stuff, we'd still have taken 15 minutes to sit there and really look these birds over, to sex them, and to point out all the different things that we know about them, and that's part of it. It's the biggest part of it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you gotta cherish those moments. Each one of those birds is special.
Oh yeah.
You don't
And that's why we pin up the fans, and even if it's a rough fan, I still pluck all the feathers and we save those.
Yeah, give that bird the respect it deserves.
Oh,
It
yeah.
lived a long enough life for us to end it and enjoy it and revel in it.
So it's I just want to say real quick, it's like you just said, it's another story. I can tell you every single feather, in my back room at the house, like everything has a story.
Right.
Who was there, what happened, the dog that was working that cover, what gun you were using, everything's a story.
Yeah.
And that's what's cool about it.
For sure. Something, I forget which one of you was saying this, but so the bird that I ended up shooting was a little bit bigger than Hayden's. We determined that it was a male. This one was a female. And you were saying, just talking about the survivability, and just the fact that a bird of that size it's against basically the odds of nature that it even reaches that size. And so it's sort of like this interesting thing, like you want to appreciate the fact that you were able to harvest this bird, but statistically speaking, it probably wouldn't live through the winter, is what you were saying. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's similar with turkeys. I'm gonna botch the statistic, but like to shoot like a mature gobbler is like the percent chance that a chick has to grow up and be that mature gobbler.
Yeah.
I think it's sub 10%. I bet it's sub 5%. I don't know. We need a Jamie here to be like looking at it. But like it's low.
Yeah.
And it's low with grouse too. And I don't know the exact amount. Again, I'd have to look it up. But I think it's sub a year. I think it's like 7 or 8 months.
Yeah.
Average life expectancy of one of these rough grouse. I mean, they're cannon fodder. I mean, they're
everything eats them.
Everything eats it.
Yeah. No, I maybe a year and a half ago, I interviewed Dr. Mike Chamberlain, who's like a wild turkey expert, and I think I'm probably gonna get it wrong, but I think he said for a Jake, so young first year male turkey, to make it through the winter to the second year, I think it's like 25% chance, and then every year after that, they say around 50%. Basically a coin flip.
Yeah.
So for a turkey to get to be 3, 4, 5 years old, like that thing is, it's probably not going to make it through the winter.
Sure.
Odds are. So you might as well harvest it, is the way I look at it. But Hayden, you were just in Wisconsin or Minnesota?
Correct. We're in Wisconsin.
How is this different from what you were seeing up there?
Yeah, like these guys are talking about cover.
Yeah.
A lot of aspen thickets. That's kind of the like stuff you're looking for.
Yeah.
It's so unique up here with these farms and stuff. I had no idea what to expect. This is dramatically different.
Yeah.
In what you're in the cover and the way you approach it. For sure.
Yeah. The old orchard stuff is super cool.
Yeah.
And we mentioned it today too. I think I asked you. I was like, how easy do you think it is to e-scout this stuff?
Oh yeah, impossible.
It's near impossible.
These covers are a blip on the map. The way that you would even see that, you'd have to come out and lay eyes on it and put a dog on it, honestly, to know if it's productive.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, we spend, so our guiding range. So the closest to my front door, the closest cover that we guide it's a 45-minute drive at best. The furthest cover that myself or my guides guide is 2.5 hours from our front door. So it's not uncommon for us on a full day hunt from wake up, load gear, load dogs, to pull in the driveway, take care of dogs, sit down and have dinner. It could be 15-hour day.
Yeah.
And the reason we do that is a lot like what we're saying is, I don't even want to say we won't pound cover. We won't take people back to the same spot day after day. we set our own limits, whether it's on a certain walk or a certain property. Kevin killed our lights here.
My bad, boys. My bad. It's that battery. Just bump that
although the
ISO.
New York State limit on rough grouse is 4 birds per person per day, like I said today, so we were able to get those 2 birds on that walk.
Yeah.
Not only to me and my guides now, not only is that particular cover done for the season, but we'll be done with that property for the season. Yeah. Because to us, that's our take. You know, we've been fortunate enough to have that opportunity on that
Put a
property.
log in there while we're all up.
And, thank you, Kevin. And that's you know, we've done what we wanted to do in that cover. You know, because we're not the only people hunting these spots.
For sure.
Yeah.
You know, so we take our piece, and then we want to make sure that next year, the year after.
Good.
Jeez, Kevin.
We should talk about woodcock a little bit.
We can definitely
We've
talk
not
about
given woodcock.
No,
No,
we haven't.
I don't. I definitely want to talk about woodcock.
Okay. Okay.
But before we move on, I want to know. I want to learn a little bit. So when you are two things. When you are getting in the truck and you're heading out and you're scouting, I want to know some of the things that you're looking for in terms of identifying potentially productive areas.
Okay.
And then also, I'm really curious to kind of I want to break it down. When you get to a piece of cover, what are you strategically thinking about and doing when it comes to working that cover? What types of factors are you looking at in terms of like topography, in terms of what you're asking of your dogs, in terms of how you're positioning your shooters, your clients? But maybe start with like kind of the scouting element.
Yeah. So kind of like Hayden said too. So scouting in New York is a little bit different than going on to Onyx, turning on your young aspen layer, looking at, you know, clear cuts and this and that and the other thing. We definitely use Onyx. We definitely use Google Earth, you know, everything like that. I like to say if you e-scout 10 covers, once you actually go look at them, 6 of them are going to be trash. They're just not going to be what you thought they were. 2 of them are going to be marginal, and 2 of them are actually going to make it to your list of huntable covers.
Yeah.
A lot of the things that I look for in New York, everybody kind of thinks this is crazy. The last thing that I'm concerned with in New York State and the Catskills is the age of a cut or the age of a cover. It's actually the last thing that I even consider. Whereas if you were to go into the Great Lakes states, that's one of the first things people consider. Right? Maybe not the first, but close to it is the age of a cut. Everybody talks about 8 to 12-year-old aspen. Age means little to me in New York. I'm looking for mostly density of cover, edges, again, where, you know, density meets mature forest, meets a swamp edge, a road, anything like that. I'm looking for food sources. I like covers that are sustainable throughout the season. So I'm looking for not only early season food and cover, but something that's going to have a nice mix, be able to sustain birds throughout October, November, December into the winter.
Yeah. Do they move much throughout the season, or will they kind of find a spot, and if it has all the makings of like a, you know, a good season long or year long piece of cover, will they stick to it?
Sure. So there are seasonal transitions for the rough grouse. A rough grouse itself, their home turf, so to speak, is really within 40 acres.
Yeah.
So I'll use a male drummer rough grouse. Their home range is within about 40 acres, but they spend most of their time within 10 acres of that 40.
Okay.
So if they can find a piece that has everything they need for the duration of their season, that's going to be their home turf.
Yeah.
They might get bounced around by pressure, this and that, you know, the other thing.
And the reason why they're called a drummer, just real quick.
They drum. So the rough grouse, what they do, that drumming is both a mating and a territorial aspect. So what they do is they have what they call a drumming log. They'll be on top of a deadfall or a stump, that kind of thing. And what they do is they actually, it's wing beats. So it creates a sonic boom. And it sounds, think of it, you're in the middle of the woods and you think you hear a John Deere
Drum solo
tractor
time.
cranking over. That
A two-stroke, yeah.
It's like ping pong ball.
basically, it's like a ping pong ball.
Yeah.
Getting dropped, it gets
It's-
fast,
yeah,
fast.
It's the world's biggest ping pong ball.
Yeah. So that's what we call drumming.
Yeah.
So we just call a mature male bird is a drummer.
Yeah.
So it really comes down to what the bird needs. You know, if they can maintain that seasonal lifestyle within that 40 acres, that's where they'll stay. If they need to move, there are seasonal transitions, so they'll find where they need to be. So there's a lot of things I look for. I mentioned dirty cover before, so like those old orchards. You know, you've got your 100-year-old apple trees next to the stone wall, right off the creek bottom.
Yeah.
You've got your multiflora rose, barberry, hazelbrush, honeysuckle, all these vines, you know, your autumn olive, wild grapes, things that are just thick and tangly. You know, if you can walk through something easily for 10 yards, you're borderline thin. Now, given there's exceptions to everything. But just that cover that just, you pull up to it and it's just like,
Gnarly.
it looks gritty.
Yeah.
You know, I want something that looks gnarly, gritty, a little character to it. That's what I'm looking for. And ultimately, even once you've found something e-scouting, you've got to go. You've got to put miles on the truck. You've got to burn some boot leather, get out there.
And that's with any stuff.
That's with anything. Yeah, absolutely. Typically what we'll do is if we pin a few potential new spots, or if I'm driving a property that I know and something catches my eye, you know, we'll drop a pin.
Yeah.
And then typically our process to check out a new cover is go there with a dog.
Yeah.
We'll drop a dog. And when we go to check it out, we might not do a full walk initially. We might drop a dog. And the first thing we're going to do is look for edges. We're going to figure out, okay, here's where we're coming in. I see on the map 200 yards to our left, it looks like a mature pine edge. And around that looks like it could be a swamp edge. We might say, we're going to go in and we're going to hit the edges. We're going to drop a dog, hit the edges. If we move a bird or two, then we know we're on the right track. While we're in there, we're looking at food, if there's any islands of cover, any objectives, things like that. And then we're just making notes of it.
Yeah.
You know, so that's kind of our initial process with finding new covers.
And then
Sorry, I was gonna say as you know, as difficult as New York hunting can be with, like, you know, e-scouting and finding these pockets, there is something about them being small because you can pick it apart.
Oh,
You can pick it apart and make notes and all that kind of stuff. Where some of these big cuts, you know, you hunt out, you know, in other states, it's like, I mean, I'm kind of grasping at straws here because, like, out there you have so many covers you can go to. Like, when I was out in Minnesota, you know, if I went back to a place more than 2 times, it was like the whole season. It was like, wow, I went there a lot.
Yeah.
So, like, there's
You
so
don't
many
have to.
options. You have the liberty of that, but there is something about these small covers where you can really dissect them, and it's cool because you can almost call where the birds are going to be. Like, there's a little fun aspect.
You
to
really
that,
get to
for
know
sure.
these birds. You know, we kind of joke about it, and there's a few little kind of covers that we have, like our, I hate to call them the honey hole covers, but they're, you know, spots that you kind of really get to know personally.
yeah.
And you start to know, like, oh, you know, at the corner of that orchard, there's a rock wall with a bend in it, and this blow down over there. Yeah, oh yeah, that's Pete. He, you know, lives over there in the corner. You know, we see him all the time.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Gets the best of us most days.
Yeah, usually does. Usually does. And it's just cool. You get to really kind of know these birds and their I guess in a sense an advantage that we have because of these pocket covers is you really get to know the tendencies of the bird, what their escape cover is, what time of day they're feeding. You know, you get to understand your habitat and your bird.
What's interesting about that is I feel like in a lot of the old literature that I haven't read a ton on it. I know you guys read a lot on this stuff, but like in a lot of the old literature, I feel like they do a lot of like anthropomorphizing of animals, which I always think is like funny and just kind of like, I don't know, just indicative of the time or period or whatever. But in reality, to your point, like depending on where you're hunting, you may actually have like this very unique like personality in your mind as it relates to some of these
Probably
birds.
similar to like target bucks.
Oh,
you know,
for sure,
yeah.
yeah.
You name them, you've
it's-
been tracking them for a
yeah.
while, and it's on a much smaller scale than that.
Yeah.
Because you're not seeing these birds 3 or 4 years in a row. But it is funny if a bird's in a pristine spot, even if that bird dies or
Someone's gonna fill that
moves,
spot. If it's a good
another bird
spot.
is filling that spot if
Yeah.
it's good.
And to that point, a cool thing, one of my favorite things about New York grouse hunting is it's not like those Lake States aspen cuts where at a certain point that cover ages out. We've got a lot of what I call timeless cover. There's some covers that we hunt that will never really
Like getting
age
older than they
out.
already are. Yeah, right.
They're already old. They're kind of past due in a sense, but just because of the structure of it and the type of food that's there and the right setup, they're just a timeless cover.
Yeah.
And a lot of that would be like alders and apples.
Exactly.
I mean, those apples have been here since early 1900s or
We were in
but mid 1900s.
one of the orchards that we walked in today was over 100 years old. And these rock walls that we're climbing over were from the late post-Revolutionary War. That's just what a lot of this area is. And these covers are, it's incredible to think about. We're certainly not the first people to walk through that cover with a shotgun. And we won't be the last. There could be another 100 years somebody's still walking that same area, hopping over that same wall, flushing a grouse.
Yeah.
Which is just, it's special.
Yeah, it's super cool. Do you want to quickly talk about like just setting people up for success when you're working through an area, like elevations changing? You probably know as the guide, as someone who's scouted this, like what areas of a piece will be impassable, but you're trying to keep people safe. You're trying to keep people spread out, and you want to see everyone, I'm guessing, at all times.
Yeah.
But you're juggling a lot because you're managing your shooters, you're managing dogs on the ground. How do you put all that together?
So a lot of it is it's kind of directing potential chaos. I guess I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
I'm at the same time I'm intently watching my hunters and I'm intently focused on my dog. Always paying attention to what's going on. For me, like we did today, as we're walking through a certain area, if I've got two shooters, I'm typically going to have one person flanking my left, one flanking my right. And then what'll happen if I know we're coming into a certain transition or a rock wall or a change, I'll have, we're always communicating. I'll always call out to somebody. If we lose sight of somebody, we'll make sure everybody knows where everybody is. And I'll call somebody over. I'll say, hey, Hayden, as you come across this rock wall, go ahead and start to swing left. You're going to see the edge of dogwood. When you get to that edge, skirt that outside edge. Try to give the best direction that I can. If we're coming up to something that looks awfully birdy, that multiflora rose tangle, something like that, then I'll tell people, hey, as we approach this edge, be ready. Or even as we're gearing up to go into a cover, if I know something tends to happen here, I'll give the best direction that I can possible. As you guys saw with rough grouse hunting, you got to be ready. You always have to be ready. So we are walking the woods with loaded shotguns, safeties on, barrels up. But it's very much a hear the flush, moment's notice, gun mount, swing, safety comes off, gun hits your shoulder, cheek, bang.
Yeah.
So it happens fast.
You did talk a little bit about anticipating where a bird is going to go to when it does flush, though. And you're sort of trying to position people to anticipate that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what'll happen a lot of times, it's kind of rough grouse hunting. There's a romance to it. There's kind of an intimacy to it where you start to know your covers and even the way your dog runs that cover. Dogs remember they're situationally oriented. They get used to place and situation. You can drop the same dog in a cover multiple times, and I can tell you if I drop Rhett, he's going to take this line. He's going to go wide around this multiflora because we've moved a bird there before. Same thing with my short-haired Cash. I could take him to another cover and say, oh, he knows we find woodcock in the back edge of this swamp.
Yeah.
He's going to go check that. I'm sure you see that with your dogs too. You have the same.
And even if it's a new cover, they start to get the hang of.
Oh, they know the birdie
They
spot.
objective
know,
on it. They know what they're looking for.
Absolutely. A good bird dog should.
Yeah.
And so we'll start to learn the tendencies of these birds.
Yeah.
We'll know halfway through this cover, we're going to hit this edge.
Yeah.
The bird's got two options. It's either going over the swamp or it's going to the pines or elevation changes. We see this a lot. I've got some covers that I can tell you 99.9% of the time, if we flush a bird, it is going up this hill or it's going straight down this laneway. So we'll absolutely position people accordingly.
Yeah.
And the big thing is, we talked about this today, as you're walking the woods, I mean, we stop pretty often for a quick conversation or just a regroup, whatever it is.
Yeah.
We tell everybody, if you're going to stop in the grouse woods, don't stop in the tangle or half bent over the log. Stop where you've got good footing.
Yeah.
Because when you stop, that's going to pressure a bird. If there's a bird there, they're going to fly. So you want to be ready.
Yeah. How much credit do you give to the dog versus yourself as a guide? Like, what percent of the work is actually done by the dog? You can hunt grouse without a dog.
I did it for years.
Right.
I hunted rough grouse without a dog for
But
years.
the dog makes it, way more enjoyable, in my opinion. Because it's cool to see them run. But also, I mean, they're quite a useful thing to have in the woods.
Absolutely. No, with the biggest differences for me without a dog are, well, if I didn't have the dogs, I wouldn't do it as much as I do.
Yeah.
That's for damn sure. The biggest differences with a dog is, to me, you get many more high quality shot opportunities, and your chance of recovering a bird goes up exponentially.
For sure.
Exponentially, especially in this thick of cover. To me, there's 10 times more excitement with a dog when you get that point. You feel your heart rate going up. It's gonna happen. It's coming. It's gonna happen. Yeah. Without a dog, you walk, you stop, pause, walk, stop, pause. Maybe a bird gets up. With a dog, you've got that preparation.
Yeah.
Whether it's a solid hard point or you get a track and you're working with the dog. You've got something to go off of.
Right.
And really, to me, it's, they're not just a bird dog, that's your teammate.
Yeah.
If you don't go out there in the grouse woods and work in unison with the dog,
Yeah.
and it takes time. It doesn't happen on day one. You've got to build up that language. You're both working together. It's, if the dog does one thing, I need to do this. And same thing, if you go to the right, that dog needs to go with you.
Yeah.
That dog needs to work with you as well. So that's where the trade-off is. And as that starts to happen, it's just, it's cool.
Yeah.
It's just cool.
For sure. Have you grouse hunted with your dogs, Hayden? How does it, or let's take a step back, because we've got 3 people here with kind of 4 different types of dogs, right? More or less. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they all work differently, and this is part of their just traits and how they're bred, how they're trained, all that. So for grouse, does your dog noticeably work very differently from the dogs that we were running today?
The dogs that I own are not necessarily bred for this type of terrain. There are dogs that are line bred with traits that are more conducive to this type of hunting.
Which in your case is?
Bigger open fields, larger running, they need to cover more ground.
Yeah.
Birds are further apart from each other than the finds that happen in these types of habitats we're hunting right now.
Yeah.
So now the dogs can adapt to that and learn where they're at and become good at that.
Yeah.
But right off the gate, the way that they were bred and trained from the time they were young is not necessarily the best to hit these kind of covers.
Right. So what are the main differences gonna be?
Range.
It's pace and range, right?
Range, yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about like the specifics of these different dogs, just so people can learn
You can talk
more
about some of the
it?
dogs that are bred in
Yeah.
like cover dog breedings, like and why
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
better.
I think it's interesting.
How saddle up, partner? How nerdy,
I
how
mean,
nerdy do you want to
Well,
get?
we could talk
Yeah.
about
Oh.
woodcock. We could talk about guns. We could talk about dogs.
Well, so you mentioned dogs.
I mean, we can do it pretty briefly.
Let's
I mean,
do
even
a quick. Let's do a
yeah.
quick brief. We'll each run
Yeah.
through kind of our personal dogs and just like the highlights of how they run.
Yeah, that sounds.
And I mean, you said it today. Like when I dropped my 8-month-old setter, you said, "Wow, he actually runs pretty similar to Rhett."
Yeah.
Which was, I mean, we talked about it a little bit at the car, but
and Rhett's an English.
English pointer, and they're pretty different breeds, but they're both grouse hunting specialists. Like
Yeah.
both of those dogs were bred with ruffed grouse in mind.
They're purpose bred dogs. So dive in.
Yeah, so I have
dive into your
I have a 3.5-year-old English setter who's half Ryman type, half field trial type. So all without getting into the nitty gritty of that, basically it was bred with in mind to insert some more high drive into a more classic type setter. And when I say classic type, I mean a little bit longer coat, a little bit longer gait, a little bit bigger, and built for grouse is what that was kind of the mindset with that. And then so he
But a field trial dog is a dog that's bred to compete.
exactly.
big-
and often that
and hunt.
kind of goes hand in hand with hunt, but they are two different venues.
And
know?
and the competition is like a big wide open space usually, right?
A lot of, well, there are
They're
grouse
covered dog
trials.
trials
There are
too,
covered
but-
grouse trials as well.
His dog was even like, I mean, those guys do shooting dog horseback trials and they do
Okay.
cover dog
Covered
trials.
dog
They do
trials,
both. Yeah.
Yeah, and his field trial side is from Northwoods Bird Dogs out of Jerry Coulter Dogs out of Minnesota.
Yeah.
And yeah, they are typically bigger running, hard charging, field trial dogs. A lot of them end up hunting quail. A lot of them end up in the
plantations in Georgia
prairie.
and things like that.
So there's a wide range of things that they hunt. A lot of them end up in grouse hunting spots. But he runs a little bit bigger than my other one. Could also be just because he's older and more mature. But typically he runs a little harder and a little faster. Then I have his son, which was bred by my friend Sam Glassberg in Albany, a good friend of Joe's as well, and bred to another Ryman type. And then that is what the puppy I have is. So differences I've seen off the bat. The son is a little more cautious, tracks a little bit more, and so far has had a softer retrieve. Some different things that I like, some different things that I kind of like more about Finn. But overall, they're two different dogs, which is kind of what I expected when you breed. You never want to go into a breeding thing you're going to get that dog because you're not.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see the differences. They brace well together. But yeah, that's why I have two Ryman type classic English setters.
So I've got Cash, my German Shorthair pointer. He's 3.5. He's out of Willow Creek Kennels in north central Minnesota. So I grew up around a German Shorthair. That was the reason that I got this German Shorthair. My grandfather had a German Shorthair that I hunted with every Saturday morning from the time I was 7 years old until I was probably 13 or 14, something like that.
Yeah.
So I got a German Shorthair, and the kennel that he's from, they do a lot of grouse hunting. They also do a lot of waterfowl, which I'm not a waterfowl hunter. I've always been a field hunter. But his sire is a dog actually named Grouser, who they run cover dog trials with. So as a German Shorthair. So I liked the look and the style of that dog. So I got a puppy from a specific litter. He's a very hard charging Shorthair. He's got a lot of speed, a lot of grit, and zero quit in him.
110.
We call him 110. So I've been fortunate to get to know Rick Smith and a number of other mentors throughout that. And he, at 4.5 months old, he got the nickname of 110 from Rick Smith and a few others. So he's my buddy. That dog's my best friend, and he's got a lot of speed, a lot of grit.
But he'll still curl up next.
He'll curl up right next to you. He curled up with Thomas the other night, sitting in the chair in the back room, and he's a lot like a lot of German dogs can be. He has a tendency to track really hard. And it's taken me a little bit of time to learn how to use that to my advantage. But when you read the dog right, and work with him, it can be very successful.
Track as opposed to just sticking a point the second you smell something.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, and that also is how they leave the point. So Finn, when he leaves a point, that's my 3.5-year-old setter, very rarely puts his nose to the ground.
Mm-hmm.
His nose is still high and he tries to like do a loop, and Rhett does a similar thing.
Yep.
Where when Cash relocates a tracking dog would be one where instead of the nose coming up, the nose goes down.
They're looking at ground scent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So some differences there. He's a little bit further ranging dog. He tends in thick cover. Cash tends to be usually 60, 70 yards. If he needs to, he'll push 100 yards in the woods, which doesn't sound far when we're talking about field trial dogs and this and that. But in the grouse woods, 100 yards is out there. It can take you a good couple of minutes to get there. And there's no straight lines in the grouse woods. Whereas Rhett, he's just shy of a year and a half old. He's an English pointer. He's an LHU type English pointer. So he's out of a kennel, Encore Pointers in West Virginia. He's got a lot of the classic LHU dogs, LHU Discovery, LHU Distinction, a few others.
What's kind of like LHU in a nutshell?
LHU was a line breeding of English pointers done by Bob Whaley, also from New York. He was out to develop a foot hunting shooting dog type of pointer, specific really for grouse hunting. A foot hunter's just comfortable distance grouse dog. And he's a lot of fun. I mean, I'm really enjoying that dog so far. He's a little bit slower paced. He's got a lot of caution. He's very effective where if we come across a grouse, he's going to stick that point and hold it. But he'll also point, track. That's what got us to where those birds were today.
Yeah.
He's a little bit closer ranging dog. He's anywhere, depending on how thick the cover is, anywhere from 40 to 60 yards on average. Today he stretched out to about 80, if he needs to. But he's also a dog that I can drop on the prairie in North Dakota, and he's going to run 175 to 200, if we need to get out there and find sharptail. So he's showing at a young age a little more versatility and adaptility than my short hair in a sense, which is, interesting, apples to oranges in some senses. But I'm actually planning in my own training, hunting, and guiding, my plan is to actually transition over to these, to all LHU type English pointers. Just for a little bit more purpose-built
Until he gets
dog.
a setter.
I'm not getting a setter. I love setters, but I'm not getting a
One
setter.
day.
Sorry.
One-
I'm not
It'll
getting a
happen.
setter.
Right.
Well, so Hayden's another setter.
Yeah. My setters are all trial lines, whether that's cover dog or all age dogs, but they're bolder, bigger running than a little bit like some of those like Ryman type dogs. But yeah, in the woods they're very confident and have no problem getting more than 200 yards away where they probably don't need to be. You know, for me to hunt with them in a tighter cover, that probably isn't the most efficient way.
Yeah.
But when you take them out to an open like pine savanna when you're quail hunting or out on the prairie, there's no other way to really hunt, in my opinion, than with a dog that hunts like they do.
Yeah.
And
they're more of a true pointing dog. When they find point, they hold, and that's their point. And the relocations aren't usually like they said, with nose to the ground. They're looking for wherever their birds may have ran off to, using their nose still, but they're not like nose to the ground, following the exact path of where the game was.
Gotcha.
And kind of part of this too, which is cool, just leads into the hunting aspect of it, is, the three of us, we have different types of dogs. I think probably the most similar of every dog that we have would really be Ragnar and Rhett.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of similarity,
Purpose-
style,
purpose
purpose, you know,
bred,
everything.
Yeah.
Part of this is really knowing, like, if somebody said, "Hey, I'm looking to get a bird dog," and it doesn't come with your first dog or until you've been bird hunting for a few years, is really knowing what you're going to do, what your plan is. You know, and there's like a German Shorthair Pointer. It's, you know, people say, you know, the Swiss Army knife of dogs, or a Draught, you know, a wire, something like that. You know, you do a little bit of everything. Whereas like myself and Kevin, we're specialists. You know, our 90% of the time we're rough grouse and woodcock hunters. You know, we do our trips to the prairies, things like that, and our dogs can do it. You know, where you're at, Hayden, you know, where our backyard is rough grouse hunting. You guys are in, you know, quail country.
Yep.
You know, plantations, quail country.
Yep.
So it's a different, you know, different dog.
Yeah.
So
a
it's
lot of woodcock too.
A lot of woodcock.
you guys get a lot of wood. Yep.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Snipe. Did you want to talk about something specific regarding woodcock, or you just want to show them?
Oh no, I just wanted them to talk about like how it's like we talked heavily about grouse.
Yeah.
And it's like, but what you don't understand is like you find the woodcock in the grouse covers. You're not going to be targeting woodcock per
Yeah.
se, but it's always something you find, and it's like keeps the clients like something to do. Like, and you have them throughout the day. Most seasons.
Most seasons. Yeah.
But we didn't encounter any today, and I just wanted
No.
to like still talk about like what to expect for the clients and like how you prepare for your day and all
Yeah.
that as it relates to both birds, not just the grouse.
Well, they're very interesting because they're one of the few upland game birds that's migratory.
Mhm.
So federally regulated.
Correct.
And they fly a lot at night.
Mhm.
Full moons, they like to move, and they don't know a whole lot about them. Still learning a lot about their migration patterns. Who was telling me the stories about that? Was it you?
Yeah, about some of the like satellite tags they
Yeah.
put on some of the birds and how like they don't all follow the same path even though they were tagged in the same place. Some
Yeah.
went this way, some went that way, like
Yeah, you were saying
They
a bird.
always return back, like
to the same place. But they're-
within. There have been like so. Minnesota. There are a lot of states that do banding of them, but
Yeah.
Minnesota, I
yeah, you
was
help with some
involved.
banding programs, yeah.
Yeah, we went and got me and Finn went and got certified to band, and just this year when I was there, a woodcock was shot, a banded woodcock was shot, and it was within 100 feet of where it was banded the year
Whoa.
prior.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. That's happened in New York too.
Yeah.
There's been some research. Sam, the friend of ours, he shot a banded woodcock a couple seasons ago. Called it in, you know, expecting it was going to be some grand story, and the same thing. It was shot within hundreds of feet from where that bird was banded.
Wow. That's crazy. You were saying there was one in South Carolina, and the assumption would be like if birds are moving north
East Coast, yeah.
East Coast, north to south with temperature fluctuations, you'd think like, you know, these birds are just going up and down kind of the same lines, but
Like a flyway, like a duck would.
Exactly.
But it's not necessarily.
Well, they're
like
also
a-
seeing ducks crossing over now
Yeah,
too.
exactly.
But you were saying there was a bird in South Carolina that ended up in like Oregon.
Yeah, no, it wasn't Oregon. It was somewhere out in Canada, but out west.
Yeah.
Yeah, far west.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Woodcock are cool birds. They're funky little birds that deserve more respect than they get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They, you know, they fly. They, like you said, they migrate overnight.
Yep.
They could fly 500 miles in one night as part of their migration. You know, typically they're looking for winds coming out of the north. You know, if they can ride a tailwind, the full moon, or people call it the woodcock moon. You know, that'll help them as well. Obviously, within their flight.
Yeah.
And they're, you know, they're part of that sandpiper family. They're just a goofy little ground-dwelling bird. You know, whether you call them a woodcock, a timberdoodle,
Little russet feller.
little. That's another. Go back to the New England kind of grouse culture. Little russet fellers.
Timber Rocket.
Frank, yeah.
Mudbat.
Frank Woolner,
Mudbat.
another author that I've read a lot. I'm sure you've read some Frank Woolner. Have you read any Frank
I don't
Woolner?
think so, no.
So you have to read. He writes a lot about woodcock.
Okay.
Just other good classic upland literature, and they're just goofy birds. You know, it's a very, when you get into a flight of woodcock, it's described as a very gentlemanly hunt. You know, you can almost with a nice dog, you can kind of set your watch back and take your time. You know, the dog goes on point, it's fun for me
You
too.
walk with your gun cracked open. You're
Yeah.
chatting. It's definitely a more gentleman's hunt where
It is. You know,
Yeah.
for me, like if Kevin and I were out and we knew we were coming into a flight of woodcock, like I very much like gun open, let the dog point, talk about your plan, walk in easy, close your gun as you approach the point. You know, these birds classically hold rather tight. You know, sometimes you can almost step on them.
yeah. And what I really enjoy as a photographer, party foul.
Party foul.
What I really enjoy is, you know, I'll bring my camera and try to get photos of the bird and the dog.
And the
Oh,
point,
yeah.
And I don't care where you live, you're not getting that shot with a rough grouse.
No.
No grouse
No
will
way.
tolerate
Yeah.
that.
Thank you, Thomas. Yeah.
There's
But
an old
they're-
writer that says, I prefer the woodcock because they honor the dog.
Yeah, respect.
And it's
yeah.
they really, for the most part, I know we keep having that caveat this year, but for the most part, they do hold really tight and are, you know, honor the dog's point.
Yeah.
So the reason that we say the caveat in this being a different year is this year's extremely dry. We actually, as of today, New York State is in a statewide burn ban. We've got multiple forest fires, you know, throughout the state right now. And in part with the dry conditions, it's affecting the woodcock migration. We didn't move a single woodcock today. I didn't move any yesterday. The day before that, I think we moved 3 or 4 woodcock, which we're in the last few days of the season. Tomorrow's actually the closing day of New York State woodcock season, November 14th. And we really haven't seen any true flights of woodcock coming in. You know, typically by now there's days it's not uncommon to go out and move 20 or 25 woodcock in an afternoon, whereas this year it's been slim pickings.
Yeah.
The other thing we're seeing with woodcock is now kind of through that evolution is more of these birds starting to run.
And I mean, if you talk to a lot of old timers, some will tell you, they never run, but they have ran
Absolutely.
for a long time.
Absolutely.
And I mean, for as long as we've been targeting them, we don't have a huge
Yeah.
like sample size for that.
Yeah.
But it does seem oddly this year that they ran more than you know the
Yep.
past couple.
Oh yeah, there were a couple occasions where we had a dog on point and we actually watched a woodcock, and their kind of walk or run is it's kind of funny the way they run. They bob their head a little bit, and it's a little bit of a waddle. And we watched the bird, and they blend in very well. That the little russet feller name, it's very much true.
Yeah.
It's they blend into their their surroundings extremely well.
Yeah.
And we watched them just bob their way around, right out in front of the dog. It's pretty interesting, but they're hardy little birds, and they're a worthy pursuit. Absolutely. For me, with what these birds go through in terms of their migration and their flight and everything, especially these flight birds, when they land, they're exhausted. It's not uncommon to flush a flight woodcock off of a point and watch that bird go up and land within 10 yards. So for me, I think, to pursue and shoot woodcock should be over nice dog work. That to me kind of makes the scene of it. There's no right, wrong, or indifferent with it. That's just what I enjoy to do.
Yeah.
But they're just fun, goofy little birds they're just a lot of fun.
Yeah. I was curious. Well, so you grew up hunting with your granddads, and that kind of was your introduction to bird hunting. You guys came to it maybe a little bit later. You said you've been bird hunting 5 years?
Yeah, 5 or 6.
5 or 6 years. How long have you been?
About 4 years, seriously.
4
now,
years?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess would love to hear a little bit about like how you guys came to it, and then any advice you have for people that are interested in getting into it, because I think there's definitely barriers to entry. I'll just say like one of the best things you can do, in my opinion, is get out with someone like Joe. Get out with a guide, and they're going to make sure that you're doing things properly. You're doing things safely. They're going to put you in good positions to succeed. But also, just in terms of like having that initial interest peaked, like how did you then kind of proceed to really dive into the sport?
Yeah. So for me, I actually filmed bird hunting before I did it.
Okay.
So I was shooting for a magazine and filmed bird hunting, and I had always wanted. I had only been hunting the year prior, period. So I was doing archery, deer hunting, and dove hunting, and some other things. But as soon as I filmed it and I saw the dog working and the birds and the cover that we found them in and just how beautiful it was, I instantly knew it was like this is what I'm gonna do. This is the kind of hunting I want to do. So then I hunted dogless or met a couple friends that had a dog and kind of got into it that year like that. And then the following year ended up landing on an English setter and just kind of got obsessed after that with the travel and with the e-scouting and just the dog training, the whole process just kind of hooked me in.
Yeah. And getting the dog, was that like a tough call? Like, did you debate it? How did you decide?
Getting a dog in general,
Yeah.
or
Well, did you have a dog before? Or
I didn't. No. This is my first like family dogs.
what
growing
made you
up,
decide to get like a bird dog? You just wanted to be
wanted
able
to hunt birds.
Yeah.
Yeah. Growing up, I didn't really know much about upland hunting. I always thought I was gonna grow up and duck hunt and get a lab or something like that. But then as soon as I saw, the whole literally taking a walk in the woods with your dog is all it is.
What were the biggest resources for you to like learn?
A lot of so I started filming for a magazine called Project Upland Magazine, and through that met a lot of people that were pretty instant mentors for me.
Yeah.
And so through that is definitely where I kind of landed on English setter and kind of figured out which direction I wanted to go.
Yeah.
And that, like, my biggest advice is, I mean, go and hunt with people, go out with guides, go out with a couple different ones, find some people in your area that might do it, hunt over as many different breeds and styles of breeds, and figure out what kind of hunting you want to do.
Yeah.
And it basically comes down, for me, find a breeder that hunts like you want to hunt. Find people that hunt like you want to hunt, because there are many different styles of hunting. And I mean, even here in New York and in Pennsylvania, they stock pheasants. So if that's more your speed and that's what you want to do, figure that out and find something that's built for that.
Yeah.
Because there are even within these are kind of northeast states where the bird hunting opportunities are really either rough grouse and woodcock or pen release birds.
Yeah.
So find something that you really enjoy. Find it with people that hunt a certain way. Find what you like, and then find the breed from there. Because I have met a lot of people that have gotten a dog, and it was a flashy dog that they saw once and maybe didn't even hunt over, and it's like, that's what I want. And then again, they're disappointed because it doesn't hunt the way they want to hunt. And there are so many options in dogs, even within the same breed, that finding really comes down to finding people that hunt the way you enjoy to hunt and getting a dog. And I mean,
and when if you're trying to get into upland hunting, if you probably don't know how you want to hunt, if you didn't grow up around it. And that's where things like going out with multiple guides, because you could go out with one guide and that might not be the right match for you.
it may not even be where you're going to hunt or live.
Exactly.
Because a dog up here in New York hunting grouse, sure, those dogs are going to do fine in almost any grouse scenario, but there are definitely dogs that are better suited for hunting New York than maybe another state.
Absolutely. I tell so many people, don't be afraid to go out with a couple of, make the investment, go out with a couple of guides, maybe any species that's in your area, rough grouse, a preserve hunt, if that's possibly of interest. Go to some of the training organizations, go to your local NAVDA chapter, North American Versatile Hunting Dog. Go to your local AKC, go to your local field trial.
What about the Rough Grouse Woodcock Society?
Yeah, go to a volunteer event. They do
Yeah.
events and stuff
That's
like
a
that.
good way to find other hunters, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we do with, I'm a member of 2 local Rough Grouse Society chapters. Our local chapter, we usually do a couple get-togethers every season. You know, whether we've done a bird dog barbecue, you know, during the spring training season, we get out and work our dogs on spring woodcock and rough grouse. Everybody brings a dog. We've had people come that don't have a dog and they're considering it. You know, if the couple groups going out, somebody might say, you know, hey, do you guys mind if I tag along? I'm thinking about getting an English setter. I see you guys have, can I come watch? You know, absolutely. Yeah. And that's the benefit to going to a field trial, NAVDA, whatever it is. You can see 15 different breeds of dogs at a NAVDA event. You know, you can go see some pointers and setters at a trial. Things like that. You know, don't be afraid to ask questions. There's no right or wrong answer, and it takes time to figure out what you want. And frankly, you might own 2 dogs before you know
Figure
what
it
you
out,
want.
yeah.
You know, it changes too. You know, I've certainly, since I started when I was a young kid, it's vastly different now. And in 2 years from now, I might want something completely different. Kevin,
Setters. He's gonna, in 2 years, he's gonna get a setter.
definitely not. No, definitely not. But no, you're what I'm getting at is you're always evolving and changing and adapting. You might change your tactic a little bit, and you might want a dog that better suits that. You know, maybe in 40 years from now, you know, hopefully I'm still, you know, trekking through the grouse woods, and I might want a dog that's a little bit slower.
Yeah.
You know, or you know, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You know, there's no right or wrong. It's just always changing, and that's just one aspect of the sport.
Yeah. You got any good tips?
I mean, these guys cover the bases pretty well.
Well, the spark came for you. You said you were growing up deer hunting.
Yeah, I grew up deer hunting in the upper Midwest, and I would encounter a covey of quail happen a handful of times, and hearing the explosion of birds under your feet is something that will change your life. And I knew, how the heck do I have that happen more? How do I encounter those? And talking to my dad, they used to see them all the time when they were younger, but it's never something that he thought to pursue. Yeah. And I knew it required a dog, and my parents weren't on board for that. I knew as soon as I was old enough to have my own, I was going to do it. And now that time of my life is now, and I don't deer hunt anymore, and now I chase dogs around in the woods. Yeah. So, and I knew from a young age that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah. And it's really, I tell people that when you kind of go through stages. You know, you get a bird dog, you get to a point where you're kind of a bird dogger, I call it. You know, you're living the lifestyle. You're kind of doing the thing. You know,
you guys all go live out west and do the whole.
We disappear to the prairie.
Yeah,
the whole thing. You know, you kind of become a bird dogger. You know, you train, you do everything. It kind of becomes that lifestyle, and then eventually, somewhere down the line, a mentor or somebody, you know, looks at you, and you kind of become a dogman. You know, which is kind of, to me, it's like, that's up there. Like it's almost an accomplishment. You know, that's really, to me, being a true dogman it's more than just living that lifestyle. It's all encompassing. You know, it's really, you hit that point where you just know that you need to do more for the dog than the dog does for you. And they do a whole gosh darn hell of a lot for you. Yeah. You know, it's hard to, if we could only live up to what our dogs do for us every day, it's just something special.
Yeah. Cool. Do you guys have other stuff? I know we got to get up early and do it all over.
We're going to do it again tomorrow. We'll try to wear Thomas out again.
We should.
Maybe find a woodcock.
He's ruined. It is so unfair that was your first grouse.
Just do that.
The over-under's
His
just eating it up.
So you know, real quick, we got to talk guns real quick.
Okay.
Real quick conversation, because Thomas buys an over-under.
Yeah.
No prejudice here. I'm a side-by-side guy. Kevin's a side-by-side.
This is all I have to say about it. Which way did the good Lord stack your eyes? Side by side.
Side by side.
Side by side.
It's how he intended us to shoot grouse.
That's
I like that.
that's a pretty good.
So going back to the the kind of the traditions of grouse hunting, everything. I grew up shooting. My first shotgun that was given to me was a pump action, Mossberg pump action. That's what I had to do everything with it. From there, I was kind of graduated to an over-under. It was a gun that my grandfather just kind of handed me one day, and that's what I started pheasant hunting with.
Yeah.
And then eventually I kind of graduated to side-by-sides, and now I kind of collect and only really shoot early American vintage
Side by side.
side-by-sides.
For anyone looking, we've got one on the table here. On a double barrel break action gun, the barrels can either be stacked one on top of the other, which is over under, or side by side. So traditionally, were the first break action guns, those were side by side.
Single action, right? Or one
So the
shot?
first double barrel was actually an over-under.
Oh, okay. So
That I
ha,
don't know.
Yeah.
who's classy now?
Yeah, it was actually an over-under. Being first doesn't make it classy.
Okay, all right.
Just
Fair.
saying.
If you ain't first to last.
That's just my preference. I enjoy shooting mostly 16 and 28 gauge side-by-sides. I love double trigger guns. I love slim, slender, grips, splinter forends, which is just a very slim, dainty style forend.
Double trigger, one trigger for each barrel.
One trigger for each barrel. It's, again, going back to kind of the tradition and that feel of time and place in the grouse woods. I shoot, my guns that I shoot were all American made in anywhere from 1912 to 1930 are the guns that I shoot.
Yeah. And you're such a nerd that you track the paperwork down.
I do.
Yeah.
I
really like the one that someone, it wasn't from Sears Roebuck. Where was it from? The one you have the cost for the extractors.
Oh, my Parker.
Parker.
So that's it. So yeah, so I've it's a 1912 Parker VHE. So it's a VH grade with ejectors, and it's a 16 gauge, and that gun was, like I said, 1912. It was purchased by a hardware company in Minnesota to be a rack gun for sale. That gun sold for $37.50 in 1912, but the cost to upgrade to ejectors was an additional $18.75. So 50%.
Yeah.
To upgrade to ejectors, which, 1912, that's big money.
Ejectors, which just pop your empty.
Shoot the spent shells.
Think
out
about
of the
buying
gun.
a $2,000 gun now and them saying, "Oh, if you want ejectors, it's
4,000.
It's exactly.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy if you think about it.
Yeah.
And those kind of guns to me are just they're again just nostalgic. It's when you open up and read Burton Spiller, Tap Tapley, Gene Hill, books like that. These are the guns that they talk about. So it's fun. It's special. It's kind of you take hold of these guns and you can feel the stories and the walks they've gone on. And to me, I just don't get that with a new gun. You can add.
Got to make the stories, man.
You can make the stories, but there's something like you just wonder what this gun went through.
For sure.
Like I purchased a Fox Sterlingworth, a 1915 made gun, and I was fortunate enough when I got that gun, the consignor of it was able to give me the history. It was this guy's late uncle's Appalachian grouse and quail gun. He hunted rough grouse with this in West Virginia for years, and then it was a gun that sat in a gun safe for 30-40 years, and now I carry it in the Catskills grouse woods.
Yeah.
So it's just cool, fun history. There's no right or wrong. There's just whatever fits you, and whatever you like to carry.
Yeah.
If Kevin does it, it's probably wrong, but
This is a pretty one. I don't know if you want to talk about it at all.
that's your new gun.
Yeah, that's my new one. I have some guns that were passed down from my grandfather. I duck hunt with one, I deer hunt with another, and up until a couple years ago, I upland hunted with the other. But this is an RFM gun, which is an Italian company that's been around for a while, and it's cool. It's like a family-run business over in Italy, and a couple of friends of mine have created a American company that imports them, and they're called Upland Gun Company. And so these are, you get custom fit dimensions and you give those to them, and so that gun is custom fit to my length of pull, my
That's cool.
everything, which is pretty cool. So
It's really pretty too. The wood and the engraving. And
yeah, so you pick your wood, you pick literally from the choke tubes all the way to the butt pad. You pick whatever you want. So it's pretty cool, and you can even mimic it after some of those old guns. The unfortunate part about a lot of those old guns, you have to sometimes shoot lighter loads or be a little more picky about what you're shooting through it. So sometimes it's nice to have something that fits you and something you can shoot anything through, or almost anything through.
Yeah, the vintage guns aren't as grab and go. We'll say, it's got its time and place, but we were all kind of drooling over the Upland Gun Company gun today. I think trying not to get ourselves in trouble with some shopping sprees. But
what's it called when the brake levers got the cutouts in it?
A skeleton.
That's so sick.
That's pretty cool. Like the little flower that you can see through.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Sweet.
Put a ribbon on it.
Yeah,
Let's do it.
We
Thank you,
could
guys.
if we dive into guns, we'll be here till tomorrow.
We can do it again sometime.
And then we won't go grouse hunting tomorrow.
Yeah, we have to be up. So thank you all. Much appreciated.
Yeah, this was fun.
Thank you guys.
And
That was a ton of fun. No, if anybody has grouse hunting questions, gun questions, dog questions, if you want to come check out the Catskills in New York, reach out.
yeah,
I'm always up for conversations and just talking grouse, guns, and
what's
whatever it
the
might
best
be.
way to get in touch with you?
You can go to our website, ccoutfitting.com. We're Covert Creek Outfitting, again, based out of the Catskills. Email is on the website. Instagram is on the website, at Covert Creek Outfitting. Feel free to email, call, any of the above. Check us out. Obviously on AnyCreek. We're happy to help, whether it's just questions, whatever it is.
Yeah, it's an awesome spot, so definitely worth a visit. Cool.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Thank-